Well, that wasn't great, was it? Not the start to the season we wanted. We wanted a close fight for the win. It didn't come to fruition, unfortunately. Max Verstappen won that race. Not ideal. So let's get into it. Let's start off looking at free practice, and we'll look at the weekend as a whole. We'll start off with FP1, which was very interesting, with Daniel Ricciardo winning it. A massive shock. No one really saw that was going to happen, but ultimately no one was anywhere close to the pace they were going to do in qualifying. No one was anywhere near that. So it wasn't a reflective lap, but Daniel Ricciardo being anywhere near the top is very, very interesting. Then FP2 even more interesting, in a way, because these laps were a little bit closer to what we would expect. Lewis Hamilton was setting the fastest lap, and it was George Russell too. It was really good pace from Mercedes. And I think we were all kind of like, can Mercedes actually push the Red Bulls and the Ferraris? They couldn't, as we very much found out. FP3 was, I'll just quickly talk about it, wasn't really that impressive. Alonso P2, maybe the biggest talking point, but realistically, those laps weren't reflective at all either. And yeah, it was not a fantastic little practice, that one. Ultimately, what we saw, though, is there is very much not much we got from practice, and we knew going into qualifying anything really could happen. But we got the anticlimax, because Max Verstappen got pole position. I think we all kind of thought he would. Our hope was, really, that their race pace wouldn't be very good. Their race pace was good as well, as we found out today. But I think we mostly all thought they're going to have good single lap pace. But in a way, it seems to be the other way around, to be honest. I think their race pace is very good. Their single lap pace isn't incredible. Perez only came fifth. Verstappen, this is another interesting thing. His lap, which he got in Q3, was slower than Leclerc's lap in Q2. So if Ferrari had held the lap together, they very much could have had pole position. Unfortunately, though, they couldn't, and Max Verstappen took pole and converted it to the win. Nico Hülkenberg, another big talking point from qualifying. Brilliant performance from him, getting up to 10th. Brilliant quality performance. Unlucky in the race. I mean, it was not. I can't really say it's his fault, that turn 1 incident with Lance Stroll. It was a bit of a racing incident, a turn 1 incident. Those things happen, and either driver was penalised for it, and I think that's the right decision. So yeah, good quality performance though. And another massive talking point from qualifying, Alpine, P19 and P20 in qualifying, really not good from them. You would have expected a lot more. But, I mean, we saw over testing, we saw over practice, that car was nowhere. But I think we thought, surely they can't be worse than Haas. And ultimately, Haas were better than Stake as well. Stake kind of seemed like the second worst team. Haas maybe third worst. But even still, Williams and Haas, it's not a lot between those, which is really interesting. Could we have Haas as the 7th fastest team? That would be very interesting. And a big surprise. Let's go to the race, because I think that's where the most talking points come from. Max Verstappen winning by 22 seconds. It's just not ideal, is it? 22 seconds is a lot. And I think it was 10 last year, something like that. And he doubled it. He literally doubled it. It really is not ideal. I feel like a clear order was kind of defined as well. Ferrari were faster than Mercedes ultimately. And Mercedes and McLaren were very, very close, but I think Mercedes probably edged McLaren in pace. In the race, I think McLaren have probably got better quality pace, but it's very weird, that one. Mercedes and McLaren are probably the closest two on the grid. It looks like it's defined. Red Bull are fastest, Ferrari second. Mercedes and McLaren very close, and Aston in fifth. The Racing Bulls, I think we expected a bit more from them, but yeah, some shenanigans going on between Tsunoda and Ricciardo over conceding position. That was very, very interesting. Very interesting. A little bit of infighting in the team in Bahrain is not what you want to happen. If that happens mid-season, fine. But for that to be happening in Bahrain, it's not even over points positions. Obviously, it can matter at the end of the season, ultimately. But it's unlikely to. And for there to be a big argument over that is very, very odd. And, yeah. But it was poor from Racing Bulls how they did it. They should not have got Ricciardo ahead of Tsunoda. And if they were going to, they should have done it a couple of laps earlier, which I think was the right thing to do. They should have let Ricciardo through. But they should not have held up Ricciardo behind Tsunoda and then let Ricciardo through for him to be slower than Tsunoda because he's behind K-Mag and has less time to get past. That doesn't really make sense, but Ricciardo ultimately could have got Hulkenberg if he had more laps. And I think Tsunoda would have got Hulkenberg if he didn't overtake, so they just messed up completely. They did the complete wrong thing. I think there's two things they could have done and they chose to do neither, which is not ideal for them. A big mistake. But yeah, the main talking point, as I said, Red Bull. Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull. Very much the dominant team. And it is not ideal to see them dominating already. Really is not ideal. Hopefully we'll see some improvements in the performance of the other teams. I do think Saudi quali will be interesting, and the other teams might be a bit closer. I certainly think McLaren will be better in Saudi. It seems like their car would probably suit that track quite well. Whereas the other teams, I don't really know. I think Mercedes might be a bit worse. Ferrari might be a bit worse. McLaren might be the second fastest in Saudi Arabia, but we will see. Ultimately, Red Bull, very good in Saudi. We could probably see both cars dominant there because Checo's good at street circuits. So I think those two could be a bit more competitive for the lead, but ultimately Max will probably be the race winner. And it will be a domination from Red Bull in Saudi, most likely. But yeah, let's get into my prediction results now. My biggest good surprise, so basically how this is going to work is I get a point for all of these that I get right. So it's very, very simple. There's nothing complex. A point if I'm judging it whether it's right. Except for driver of the day and all the pole position and the finishes, that's pretty obvious. But these biggest good surprise and stinker of the day, I've kind of got to go with. Biggest good surprise with Lewis Hamilton. I'm not giving myself that. No chance. He was decent. Probably should have been closing in on Norris a bit faster. He was very, very decent, but I don't think he was anywhere close to biggest good surprise. I was talking maybe close to podiums, and he was not that, so I'm not going to give myself that point. Stinker of the day, I went with Max Verstappen. It just didn't happen. I was going with him DNFing, to be fair. I was going with some mechanical problem that took him out of the race. He would have a stinker. That's what I was saying. Driver of the day, I said Carlos Sainz. He was driver of the day. So, perfect. I said he'd be the race winner. He wasn't, but he was third to the Red Bulls, and that's practically race winner, best of the rest. The Red Bulls are always going to be dominant, so that makes sense as well. Pole position, I went with Max Verstappen, another one right. He did get pole. I did not say he would convert it to a win because I thought he was going to DNF, but he did get pole. Third place, I had Lando Norris. Yeah, that didn't happen. They were decent McLaren, but not quite on that level. It was who we finished third. Carlos Sainz finished third. I had him first. Second place, I went with Sergio Perez. That one is correct. I did not think that he would actually be good. I had him behind Sainz, who was winning. So I basically got Perez and Sainz the wrong way round, with Verstappen out of the race. But ultimately, I ended up getting the point because Verstappen did finish the race. and Sainz was third, Perez was second. So a bit of a weird way of getting the point. I got the point, so we'll take it. And my crazy prediction was 5 or more drivers will DNF. That also did not happen. Nobody DNF, which is another weird one, that nobody retired from the race. Obviously, Sargent had his issues. Bottas had like a 50-second pit stop. I'm surprised he didn't retire the car there. Hulkenberg and Stroll crashed. There was not really any risk of retiring those two, but there was a lot of possibilities of retirements, and Albon was having issues all race, Leclerc was having issues all race, Russell was having issues all race. It's very strange that nobody out of all of that retired the car. That is a bit crazy. I think we all kind of thought there would be a retirement, and for there to be none is very interesting. But yeah, that was not a great Bahrain Grand Prix, to be completely honest, but there's another 23 races to go. Verstappen can't win the other 23, can he? He has to lose at some point, you know? I mean, that's what I'm holding on to anyway. He better not win the other 23 races. Still got to get that Lando Norris win this year. And that Hamilton last win in Mercedes, you know? But yeah, an anticlimactic weekend from what we saw in practice. Because practice showed that there was a potential of somebody challenging Max. Quali showed Ferrari were close to Max, and even the Q2 pace of Leclerc was faster than Max's Q3, as we said. It was very much a case that we were thinking maybe there could be a challenge to Max in the race, and for him to pull 22 seconds clear and 25 clear of the nearest non-Red Bull car is not fantastic. It's not fantastic at all. But yeah, as I say, I think there will be some improvement in the next few races. And yeah, the only way's up on the entertainment, hopefully. And yeah, that is going to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.